Yo, I'm gonna be reacting to movies that don't feel real. Let's get it.
There's a common paradox throughout the internet centered around movies that provide an eerie, fever dream-like atmosphere. Typically, these films feature bizarre,
Bro,
vivid,
Nine is a
or
classic.
uncanny imagery, but in some cases, this feeling is simply a result of the era it was released in and the nostalgia that
This is
people
a
attribute to
classic.
it.
The other
So
one is a
often, a movie
classic,
that came out in the early
but
2000s.
I ain't really watched that one. Ain't this the one? I forgot what it's called. Aren't they playing like some board game and then some shit, just random shit happens? Yeah.
Is simply a result of the era it was released in and the nostalgia that
Me and my family literally just watched this past Christmas.
people attribute to it. So often, a movie that came out in the early 2000s will have a stronger effect on someone that grew up in that period. These movies don't always give off the same feeling to everyone who sees them, but there are a lot of examples where the
Dumbo.
notion is widely shared. While it might be an extremely niche category, today I want to dive into this phenomenon and look at what I could find for the most fever dream-esque films that don't feel real. One of the most popular instances of this is Where the Wild Things Are. The movie's based on a children's book that was originally published in 1963 by Maurice Sendak. It involves messages of imagination and appreciating your home, but what stands out in the story are the illustrations of the wild.
Oh, back in the day, were y'all kids that was like, so like as I've gotten older, I'll really like look at these things and be like, if I genuinely seen these things in real life, I don't know, like just pure fear would just wash over me. But as a kid, I got how it could be weird, but like I would be like, yeah, I'd get used to it somehow. You know what I mean? Like, I just get used to it. Like, yeah, that's the big homie. I forgot their names, but that's the big homie.
Things themselves. They're these weird, monstrous, humanoid things that are scary enough even as simple drawings in a picture book.
Yeah, this
So
is
when it was
scary.
translated to a film in 2009, it only made the creatures that much more unsettling. While the movie itself received
Nah, I
solid
think the
reviews,
book
it's understandable that the
looks
children
more
watching
scary.
it would feel confused. There's a particular scene where Carol, voiced by James Gandolfini, gets upset with the main character and starts yelling and pulling off arms. But for whatever reason, it's super intense for something aimed at kids, and a lot of people remember this part for how much it scared them growing up.
No, that's not true.
Look, I just went along with it because I knew you wanted it so much.
Don't say that.
No! Carol, stop it! Stop it! What are you doing?
Carol, what?
You lied?
You're out of control!
I'm not out of control. You were supposed to take care of us. You promised. I'll let you out.
To say the least, Where the Wild Things Are has a unique, dreamy feeling about it, and it makes sense that it impacted so many in the way it did. But the next one I want to look at that you may or may not remember is Arthur and the Invisibles. Released in 2006, Arthur and the
never
Invisibles
watched
is
it.
about a kid named Arthur who wants to save his grandma's house from being destroyed by a real estate developer, and it might not seem like anything out of the ordinary at first, until Arthur enters a world of tiny nature beings to try to find his grandpa's hidden treasure to save the house. And I mean, just look at it. Even for the year it was released, the animation
Yeah, I
is
can see
shaky
how
and
this
it just doesn't
would be
look like
like
many
a
other
fever
movies.
dream.
Pair these off-putting visuals with weird over-sexualization and Snoop Dogg, you get an absolute trip of a movie.
Long live the seven kings.
What?
Long live the Seven Kingdoms!
And they made
The
him
film
white.
wasn't very lucrative for the studio, barely breaking even at the box office, yet they still made 2 sequels. But if you saw any of them, I'm sure you were thinking the same thing as everyone else. What am
Or
I watching?
Irish.
Taking
Oh,
it back
no,
many,
bro.
many decades, we have the original Dumbo, released in 1941. I'm not even going to explain what Dumbo is because it's a pretty classic story. Just know it's an elephant with some big-ass ears. But if you don't remember this movie, it might be a little confusing why I included it. And while it is a
My favorite childhood Disney movies. I did spam Dumbo as a kid, but it was Nemo and Cars. I remember. It was my cousin. She was like, she's either in her 20s, late teens, and I promise you, we watched Nemo like 7 times over. And I don't get the capacity of how kids can just hyperfixate on something like that. Now I'll hyperfixate now on a topic, but like I need that variety nowadays.
Fairly innocent, fun, animated adventure for the most part, the film takes a drastic turn at a certain point. Dumbo stumbles upon a liquid substance of some kind, which he drinks and literally starts geeking. And for a little while, it turns into a crazy, psychedelic, visual acid trip. And once again, for the
Hey, who's done psychedelics? No Fed shit. No Fed shit though. No Fed shit.
demographic, a scene like this stands out, and it's led to it having generation after generation wondering if what they watched was real or just in their heads. Zathura, A Space Adventure, on the other hand,
You
from
can go back and look
2005,
at
is a
it.
movie that didn't necessarily
Oh,
have any
shit.
wildly odd animations, and the effects were honestly on par with most releases from that year. However,
I remember. I can't remember. Was this on like Disney XD or some shit? Cause I remember. I don't know, bro. But this, I didn't watch it that often because I think it bored me as a kid. Like, I like shit where it placed you in, like your world was the weird world versus you're being transported to the world. That's why, like Sword Art Online, that shit never like clicked with me. And then I heard it like fell off. But the first season is good. I don't know, bro. This shit, yeah. I never watched it. It was boring to me.
many people forgot about this movie and thought it was just a dream somewhere in the back of their mind. No one ever talked about the movie. This left me with a concerning belief that I very well could have dreamt the whole thing. It wasn't until I was hanging out with my friends scrolling through Instagram together, we saw this meme that said something along the lines of, "Who else remembers Zathura? Wasn't it wild?" We both looked up at each other and it was like a light bulb went off. But Zathura was very real and it's actually pretty solid. If you haven't seen it, it's essentially Space Jumanji. Two brothers play a board game that launches their house into space, and the only way to get back is to finish the game. It's a really fun concept, but there's just something about the film that can't be described. It's very easy to forget,
Who
but
is, bro? Don't he be acting nowadays too? Who is that?
once you remember it, you wonder how you ever forgot about it. There is a part of the movie where the younger brother, Danny, has to go down to the basement by himself, and it's inhabited by alien lizard pirates. But the whole scene is shot like a horror movie, and it definitely contributed to my fear of basements as a kid.
So zombie lizard pirates. Yeah, I wouldn't be checking this shit out as a kid.
The next movie I want to look at, though, is James and the Giant Peach. It's from the same director as Nightmare Before Christmas, which you can absolutely tell, but this feels a lot more like a nightmare than that. It's a kid whose parents die brutally.
An angry rhinoceros appeared out of nowhere and gobbled up his poor mother and father.
And one thing leads to another. He crawls through a very large peach through its peach hole, and he's just in a peach with an ensemble of freaky bug creatures. Since its release, there's been confusion around what the message of it actually is, as there's so much random stuff to interpret.
Even as an adult, I have no idea if this is supposed to be a symbol for something or supposed to be an obstacle that he needs to overcome, like mentally, or if it's just like, throw in a robot shark, why not?
That's so random.
It features child labor, and it kind of just pushes this weird narrative that all adults are terrible and evil. James and the Giant Peach is based off a Roald Dahl book from 1961, and a lot of his books tend to have more hidden, dark, mature messages, but I really just can't help but wonder why they thought this would translate well into a movie in 1996. It's made from stop-motion animation, and it doesn't look bad, but it's another case where the style of it could be seen as pretty unsettling, and even the live-action scenes have some scary, weird stuff in them, like these two freaky old ladies, or this creepy dealer dude who's selling stuff to a kid. All of this contributes to it feeling like a dream, but a lot of people do like James and the Giant Peach and have some deep nostalgia for it. And I can see some of the charm, but overall it's just so odd.
For one small mite. One tiny bite. Of this fantastic.
Although a film that
So he's saying that's creepier than, was it Nightmare Before Christmas? I mean, it looks weird, but it's like, I don't know. Doesn't look too weird, if that makes sense. I'd have to check it out.
I'm sure most people have never even heard of is Dougal, which has a confusing existence to begin with. Let me explain. Originally, there was a British movie titled The Magic Roundabout directed at UK audiences.
Yes, Florence, of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Well, don't think you're getting a sugar lump just
Yeah?
for turning up.
Sugar? Who needs sugar? Not me. I quit. This morning.
I'll believe that when I see it.
But for whatever reason, the film was redubbed for American audiences and was retitled Dougal, and let's just say it was not a good decision. Not only did it get terrible reviews, it had a budget of $20 million and only grossed $7 million at the box office, which is why, for most, their memories of this film probably came from watching it on DVD or while it was just on TV at some point. And with there being two different versions, I'm sure that some remember both, which can make this already forgettable movie that much more of a convoluted memory. Because that seems to be the general consensus for Dougal. The whole thing just feels off.
This movie actually gave me nightmares as a little kid. I had erased it from my memory. Then I see this again. I see it. I thought it was a dream. Thanks for uncovering. I saw the movie somewhere at some point.
Off. Whether it's the bad animation or the odd character design, if Dougal stuck with you, it was probably for the wrong reasons. Spiderwick Chronicles is a movie that I think intentionally creates these feelings. It was released in 2008, and there were many who grew up in that time period that watched the film and completely forgot about it. It's a fantasy adventure movie with magic and mythical beings where the whole premise is centered around the separation of the mythical world and the real world. Again, a lot of the characters look pretty uncanny or just outright scary to people who saw it as a kid. But I think one of the main reasons it's had this fever dream effect across the board is that it has the vibe of other popular fantasy adventure stories from the time, like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, but it never turned out to be a franchise or took off in any significant way. So at the end of the day, it was just pushed to the back of people's minds. They did try to reboot it as a series earlier this year, similar to Percy Jackson, but it wasn't received very well.
I did not know. Hold on, bro. Percy Jackson got a series? The fuck?
It was just pushed to the back of people's minds. They did try to reboot it as a series earlier this year, similar to Percy Jackson.
Anybody know if this is good? I don't really watch live action shit, but you know, Percy Jackson's a classic. And it's the new dude.
But it wasn't received very well. Still though, most people look back pretty fondly on this one. For a movie like 9, however, the biggest contribution...
I had a friend during like elementary age. He was big into this shit, and I was staunchly against horror movies, bro. It's like, nah, bro, this ain't a horror movie, bro. And I still don't consider it a horror movie. So I trusted him, and I fell in love with this shit. I needed the 9 doll. I think he ended up getting one, like a figurine. I was so jealous of him, bro. But this, bro, 9 is such a classic. I remember the twins were my favorite. Just they had the best doll design, bro, for sure.
Contributions to its dreamlike atmosphere are the messages and subject matter at play. When a kid's film has extremely mature themes, it could easily lead to children.
I had a crush on her. I don't know why. I had a crush on her.
Watching it and feeling so confused
Back
by
in
the
the day.
concepts that it doesn't have much staying power and they forget about it entirely. I think that's the case for a lot of people who watch 9. It's supposed to take place in an alternate post-apocalyptic version of World War II where machines are at war with humans. Watching it as an adult and looking at these symbols, for example, it doesn't take much to see what they were getting at. It absolutely has a unique art style, but it also just has some terrifying visuals. My personal experience with this movie as a kid was seeing it recommended to me and always thinking it looked too sad or dull for it to be something that grabbed my attention. I probably saw bits and pieces of it, but I never actually processed the whole thing, and even for people who saw all of it as kids, the runtime only clocks in at 79 minutes. It does manage to say a lot in such a short time, and it's pretty damn good. Regardless, a combination of this short runtime, a very somber tone, and standout visual designs left a strange impact for many. Anyway, like I said, these movies impact people differently, so I'd be curious to hear other opinions as well as other films I didn't mention that have the fever dream effect. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. See you. Have you ever had a film buried?
Other movies that have fever dream qualities? No, I don't know any off the top of my head, but, you know, have a good one. Thanks for tuning in.